So tonight we are at verse 4 in the 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva by Gyalse Togme Zangpo. And I'm going to forgo the Tibetan tonight because it's a little darker and it's hard to see. So, friends and relatives acquainted for long will separate. Possessions gained with exertion will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. To let go of this life is the practice of a bodhisattva. And this is similar to the one to verse 3. Again, we're talking about being unattached. And so we really ought to look at what that means. Some people understand unattachment in Buddhism to be a little bit more zoned out and always in a state of bliss, but that's more a detachment, a kind of high detachment. And unattached is being, I want to say, cognizant of the impermanent nature of things. And as a Buddhist practitioner, the first lesson we really need to dig into is impermanence. Specifically, in the Tibetan term that gets translated as impermanence is mitakpa. And that means changing. And it literally means changing millisecond by millisecond, which means kechikma. Everything is changing. And as it changes, it transforms, and things either decay or become something new. In the case of, for example, a wooden table, over time it decays and falls apart. In the case of a seed, it blossoms into an oak tree over time. An acorn turns into an oak tree. So having unattachment means not overestimating how much joy something is going to bring us. The things don't bring us the joy. The things don't bring us any kind of real value that lasts for too long. We want to have an understanding of the impermanent nature of reality, including ourselves. So in this first line, when it talks about relatives and friends acquainted for long will separate. And I often joke that we're always making laws to protect people from hurting themselves. So now whenever you buy a table, the ends are rounded off so that children don't fall down and gouge their eye out on the corner, and so on. And so if we're going to outlaw things that are dangerous, when are we going to outlaw birth? Because that is the cause of every single death. Everything that is born must die. Things that come together must eventually separate. And so here, Gyalse Togme Zangpo is kind of echoing one of the lines of Shantideva that we mentioned before, which is, when the messengers of death arrive, what good are friends and what good is family? And that's because there isn't a friend or a family member that can keep us from dying. We're all going to die. Everyone that has ever existed in the past is gone. And those of us that are living now have, an expiration date somewhere in the future. So for us to be too attached to friends and family, one thing that does is we have a bit of selfishness to those things that we call my friend or my mother, my father. And so it limits the amount of joy and the amount of compassion that we can develop, because often with that possessive pronoun, my or mine, we limit, we make a distinction between what is mine and what is not, or what is safe and what isn't. And that's a big problem that we see going on today. I think ever since 9/11 happened, one thing that I've noticed in my interaction with the world in America is that fear pulled people tighter to their families and created a bigger divide amongst others in their community, strangers and people they don't, totally don't know. Which is what a stranger is, I guess. But this possessive pronoun is part of that dak zin that Tibetan philosophy Tibetan Buddhist philosophy is telling us to be to try to reduce. So the more dakzin, the more selfishness there is, or self-grasping that there is, the more suffering that there will be. And the more we work on reducing this sense of self-grasping, and we extend ourselves outward to try to help others, the more our own happiness will increase. And, by extension, the happiness of those people around us. So this seems very difficult because, most people do good deeds because it's like on a checklist that they have to for their religion, or even in Buddhism. I know people who do things to, I've got to do this so that I'm, working on my collection of merit. And Gyalse has said over and over and over again, and I try to work on it as much as I can, that if you're expecting even so much as a thank you from somebody, you're just setting yourself up for, it's a transaction. And so you're wanting their end of the bargain. You hold the door open for someone and they don't even say thank you and you get upset, then you didn't really hold the door open for somebody. You held it open for yourself to get some kind of praise. And this is, it's difficult because, we're trying to work on if anyone who's serious about trying to work on themselves, that we want to look, we want to be able to categorize the things that, am I doing well here? Am I doing well there? And so on. Even I've heard the Dalai Lama talk about the things that he does to reduce any kind of pride that he might have come up because, he's the Dalai Lama and he gives these teachings and all thousands of people, flock to arenas to hear him speak and to teach. And so he talks about having to have something to help us reduce this pride, and dakzin for him. He says, whenever I start to feel this sense of pride coming on, I think about computers. Now I know nothing about computers, and it really brings my pride back down. So same thing, I have in my room, I am surrounded by the Buddha and different Buddhas and teachers and so on, and I need these different reminders of my practice, of my commitment to try to better myself, to try to achieve highest enlightenment to help everybody else. And, what a wonderful world it would be if we could all love one another and have compassion for one another. And whenever we see pain or suffering, we flock there and do everything we can to remove it. What a wonderful world that would be. But we're also living in a time now where people are so hypnotized. In, America, the antithesis to everything that we're talking about in Dharma is what makes capitalist culture thrive. It's greed, tapping into people's desire for things. And it is an emotion, and it is a quality of living in samsara, and it's particularly the desire realm. One thing that propels us along in the desire realm is creating a want and a desire for something, and whether that be an attraction to an object or a repulsion from it, the desire to have it or to get away from it is what the mind stream shoots into the future, these imprints that we're going to experience and so on, according to Buddhist philosophy. And if you do a little bit of study and really analyze it, it's absolutely true. Then possessions gained with exertion will be left behind. You think about how, I'm at the age now where I have to be concerned with, I could die tomorrow. My mother died at 56. There's no guarantee. So what happens to all of these possessions and so on? My best friend knows that one of my wishes is that all of the Buddhist paraphernalia that's in here gets given to the Indiana Buddhist Center so it can be, given to people who need it. So I don't look at these things as mine. I look at these things as, stuff that I'm borrowing for now. And, I'm also at that age where AARP sends me life insurance policies and tries to get me to do that. Well, that's the thing. We work hard for all of this stuff, and then it's gone. We're gone. And we leave all this stuff behind. And so this is, as it says, the exertion that we've put into acquiring possessions Possessions gained with exertion will be left behind. Nothing that I have here, I think, is anyone going to really fight over. But we know, we've seen plenty of movies and read stories where someone passes away or is killed, and all the family shows up to hear the reading of the will. This stuff, where humans aren't that much different than pack rats, are we? We just don't stick them in furry nests. We leave them out and polish them and show them off as much as we can. But it's all falling apart. And it's all impermanent. And we can't, it doesn't define who we are. And that's the big thing, is these possessions don't define us. Our net worth doesn't define us. My former business partner used to always get upset when he'd wake up in the morning and see the ticker tape at the bottom of the screen saying that the stocks were down, and he'd be in a bad mood for the rest of the day. And I'd be like blown away thinking, were you planning on selling any of this stuff? And he said, no, but my net worth is now down. I'm like, then don't pay attention to it. I don't pay attention to it. Money is man-made. And the next day, the stocks probably go back up. And the net worth goes back up. So you're attached to that. You've invested yourself in that. Then that's what Togme Zangpo is saying. Practice on attachment. This is a practice of a Bodhisattva. To recognize that, when we in English say that, like, I have a coffee mug. We use the word have, a coffee mug. And the Tibetans, and I believe I was told that in Hindi they also use the same. The word for having is the same thing as being. Like, I am here, I would say nga de ye. When I have a coffee mug, nga karyo ye, nga la karyo ye. And it really means more of, we have stuff near us. We don't have things, but we're near things. We're at a place where other stuff happens to be. So anyway, that is the fourth verse, and I hope you really, really put some effort into analyzing these verses and make them a part of your practice and really try to feel a transformation. I promise you that it will reduce your suffering.